Welcome to the Civic Brief with Dr. Isaiah Ike Wilson III, where complex issues meet everyday lives. Now, let's begin.
Now, there's a quiet shift underway in the international system. Not a collapse, not a war, not even a single event you can point to. It's something more subtle. The system hasn't broken. It's lost its balance point. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So first, I want to present an idea, and I'm going to borrow from Newtonian and Einsteinian physics, astrophysics, and I'm a long student of geopolitics, but I've always been fascinated by all things cosmic and astrophysical. And theoretical. I've been fascinated with theoretical physicists and their works. You've seen and probably read some of my works doing a transposition from the world of physics, Newtonian physics, to help over to social science and the world of politics, defense, and security and strategy, to try to help explain to ourselves and those that we're charged with influencing, to gain an appreciation even from Newtonian physics in the power equation, the unique, intimate, mutually affecting relationship between force and power, but also importantly, as the equation itself shows, that power and force, though intimately interrelated, you can't have power without force. That force and power are two separate things. They're two separate variables. Power is, as a resultant, is a result by the Newtonian equation. Power is the result of force multiplied by this displacement vector, a directional vector. It really relates in geopolitics to the way we employ and the directions within which we employ different elements of force, instruments of force, elements of power over time, right? And to truncate that Newtonian equation, power equals work over time, right? I've done some later related work extending from Newtonian physics over to Einsteinian physics to try to bring Einstein's special and general theory of relativity to the world of geopolitics and social science more broadly, even into the quantum realm. I've been very fascinated of late with, and inspired, frankly, as I think the whole world has been, by the Artemis 2 expedition, 50 plus years return back to the far side of the moon, and importantly, back again home safely to the United States. A very inspiring moment, not just for the United States of America, but for certainly the transatlantic community and the world system writ large. Very, very inspired by that. And again, I've gone back to my whiteboards and done a little bit more transposition, this time in terms of astrophysics, and trying to look at parallels in effective transpositions to help us explain some of the dynamics from the universe in the world of astrophysics to our conditioned state right here on terra firma. I've written several pieces on my Substack, Compound Security Unlocked, relating to this phenomenon in astrophysics called the three-body problem, or the three-body challenge. I'm gonna talk a bit about that today. I'm not gonna get deeply into the physics. This is gonna be a plain spoken conversation about our core issue at hand here, that it inspires these dispatches, these letters from this side of the pond, this side of the transatlantic relationship, and more pointedly, this side of a strained, to put it kindly, special relationship between the United States of America and the United Kingdom. I want to apply this to our conditioned state today in relationship to, broadly speaking, our right here at home, right here on terra firma three-body problem. So that's a long preamble into the idea that I have here. So let me kind of present this to you, and the graphics will hopefully reinforce the idea that I want to put on the table. So, and here's that idea. There's a concept again in physics. It's called a Lagrange point. Now, it's a place where competing gravitational forces tend to balance just enough, importantly, just enough that something can remain stable in motion, not still. And that's a very important point to understand, not still, but stable. Now, for nearly 80 years, the global system had something like that. It had a Lagrange point, not formal, not codified in treaty, not codified in Newtonian or Einsteinian physics, but very real nonetheless. An expectation. It was an expectation that the United States, that Lagrange point, would act not just as the most powerful actor, but as a stabilizer, a regulating force, a center of gravity, if you will, underwriting the global commons, absorbing shocks, enforcing norms selectively, imperfectly, certainly, but predictably. That wasn't altruism. It was strategy, and it worked because it gave the system a reference point. Now, that reference point, frankly, folks, friends, it's now fading. Not all at once, but very steadily. The shift wasn't just policy, it was behavioral. It is behavioral. A move away from system management towards something more transactional, more conditional, more selective. The signal, clear enough, was and is this: the United States is no longer committed to playing the role of stabilizer. And the consequence, well, it's very profound. Because what matters most in international systems is not just institutions, it's expectations. And today, those expectations have changed. Actors across the system have internalized a new premise. There is no longer a reliable center. Now, when a system loses its balance point, three things, at least three things happen. First, competition becomes unbounded. Now, competition used to be structured. Now it's everywhere. Economic tools become weapons. Information becomes terrain. Law becomes an instrument. The lines between war and peace, well, they blur into something continuous. What we're seeing is not just competition, it's compound competition, pressure building across multiple domains at once. No off switch, no pause, just constant friction. Secondly, legitimacy, well, it fragments. A stable system doesn't just balance power, it stabilizes legitimacy. Now, for decades, even critics of the United States operated within a shared framework of norms. That is no longer true. Now we see competing models. China, performance and delivery. Russia, identity and sovereignty. And there are others, regional and situational legitimacy. There is no single standard anymore. Legitimacy has become plural. It's become contested and slower to form. Now, in my own work, I describe this as a breakdown in what I call legitimacy velocity, the system's ability to generate shared agreement. When that slows, systems begin to drift towards more and more fragmentation, towards what I've called in my other work, null zones. Thirdly, crisis, well, it becomes condition. In a stable system, crises are events. They happen, they get managed, and eventually they end. But in a system without a center, crises don't end. It becomes, and they become ambient, constant, persistent. We should all have ringing in our heads right now the situation in and around the Strait of Hormuz and that enduring main effort, the Islamic Republic of Iran, in the ongoing US-Israeli-Iran war. Escalation pathways under these conditions are less predictable. Signals are harder to read. Local conflicts ripple onward. The system behaves less like a controlled structure and more like a stress network without feedback control. Now, there's an ecology or an ecological analogy here as well. Remove from any ecological system the apex predator, and the system doesn't become peaceful, it becomes all the more unstable. Intermediate actors under this instability of the ecosystem, well, those intermediate actors expand. Smaller players hedge. Non-state actors exploit gaps. Alignment becomes temporary, transactional. Trust erodes. And what replaces that trust is constant repositioning. This is what a world looks like when it loses its regulating force, its Lagrange point. Now, there's a paradox at the heart of all this. The move away from being the system stabilizer was, in part, about reducing or attempts to reduce burden. But here's the reality. When the system loses its center, costs frankly don't disappear. They multiply. And they return in more volatile forms. More unpredictability, not less. More reactive decision making. Less strategic control. Now, in trying to step back from the system, the United States now faces a system that is much harder to manage, not easier. So, what replaces the balance point? Well, I see three possibilities. A fragile multipolar equilibrium, regional centers of stability, but no global one, or no replacement at all, a system that simply operates without a center. Now, this last scenario is the one we are closest to now. It's the one that worries me the most because it is the most dangerous. So where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us in a world where power still matters, but stability does not come with it. It's a world where legitimacy is contested, where competition is constant, where the system doesn't collapse, it drifts. And drift in complex systems rarely leads to equilibrium, that balance point. It leads to friction, more and more friction, persistent, a friction that's everywhere and all at once. The 20th century was defined by the creation of a balance point. The early 21st may be defined by its loss. And the question now is not whether competition intensifies. It will. The question is whether, without a center, it can remain bounded, or whether it becomes something else entirely. Not war, certainly not war as we've come to know it, but something more ambient, more constant. A system in motion with nothing left to hold it in place.
Thanks for tuning into the Civic Brief. Got questions, insights, or ideas? Join us at thecivicbrief.com to continue the dialogue. Subscribe, share, and be part of shaping the future, one brief at a time.